Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Spilling Tea. I'm your host, Tiffany Daniels, and we're going back to that horrible world known as the JRC. But before we do the disclaimers, just a brief discussion here. So I saw a comment this morning, and I was going through my regular routine on the video from yesterday, and I just wanted to address it. It was in regards to the fact that yes, during these videos, I use foul language, which is why I put the disclaimer in there that we do use profanity and speak on dark subjects. I always suggest parental supervision. This commenter basically mentioned that won't get anywhere with foul language. My first reaction to this is anger. A lot of anger. Let me explain to you why. Because me and the millions of other people out there like me, majority of us have had to mask our entire lives. Like with any interaction whatsoever. We had to fake being neurotypical. To do so, we had to create a persona to do that. That's exhausting, folks. It's exhausting. That's just the surface issue on that. Number two, there's psychological damage and trauma that goes along with it. Me in my ordinary life, as I am without a mask, is an individual pushing 40, raised by a veteran who's also a truck driver, whose grandfathers were in the military, whose brother was in the military. Cursing has been a part of my life since I was young. That is the culture that I was brought up in. Curse words are a major part of my vocabulary. Because of that back trauma of having to force myself to pretend to be somebody else, when someone brings something up like this, like my language, I get hyper defensive. Big time. Because not only is it how I was brought up, but you have all that decades of trauma and psychological damage that is the toll of having to mask. Obviously, I've thought about this since I've seen that comment. Although I am still very angry, I get it. You can be angry at something and still understand. Okay? But I also want to talk about something else here. There is this fallacy that's been around for years now. It was a major part of PC culture. Foul words means you're unintelligent. You'll never get anywhere with foul words. Look at the world, sweetheart. Look at the world. Okay? Now, I'm going to do my best to tone it back a bit. But I'm not going to put back on my mask so that I don't curse and offend people. Because to be perfectly honest, as a Gen Xer, I don't care if I upset people. I hope it upsets you. I want to get a reaction out of you so that maybe you can start thinking. If you come to my channel with all the information, all the tools that I give you in every single video, And your first thing, the only thing you comment on and seem to notice is my language. Am I the problem? Or you? I'm trying to handle this very level headedly as best I can. But I'm going to be up and honest here. I grew up using profanity. I'm pushing 40. There's going to be profanity on this channel, especially considering it's a genuine reaction to the level of just bigotry, hate, and in response to the atrocities and basically equivalent to war crimes being carried out on people like me every single day. Okay? I got some words for that. And I'm not going to censor myself and don the persona, dust the dust off of it, and put it on again because you're offended on how I speak. I will tone it back, yes. And I do want to genuinely thank you for bringing it to my attention. I do want a wider audience. But I'm not going to sacrifice who I am and how I got here to do it. All right? Now to the disclaimers. In the description box, you're going to find a link to the article that the Judge Rotenberg Educational Center doesn't want you to read. It's written by NeuroClastic, a small non-for-profit started by autistics for autistics, wherein they interviewed and surveyed over 900 ABA professionals in regards to the JRC's so-called behavior modification program. Matter of fact, the JRC doesn't want you to read this article so much they've threatened NeuroClastic with a defamation lawsuit if they did not remove it from the website. Well, folks, NeuroClastic has refused, so you know the drill. Please read that article. Share it on all your social media, all right? We also have linked in there NeuroClastic's public statement in regards to the defamation lawsuit threat, as well as a link to their GoFundMe. We are crowdfunding, folks, in case the JRC has the cojones to see through with their threat. We also have linked in there the Ozark's first article in regards to the Agape boarding school, now known as Stone for Help situation. This is a so-called Christian-themed boarding school based out of Stockton, Missouri that has and pending over 25 civil lawsuits, claims, and allegations leveled against it. All of these claims have thus far been substantiated by the hard evidence gathered by the Missouri Department of Social Services. Trigger warning. What has been accused is extremely troubling. Please pause this video if this is going to, or fast forward, or just go to the description box. They include sodomy, rape, sexual assault, child abuse, psychological and emotional abuse, child trafficking, starvation, and that's just for starters. You have one former staff member arrested by the FBI. Another, a doctor, still on the premises, full access to the boys up on multiple substantiated claims of sodomy, rape, and sexual assault of the boys there. You have an attorney general too obsessed with drag queens to actually, go after the real pedophiles in this state. And you got a governor whose office nuts. So please read that article and share it on all your social media. We also got the other pertinent links to the Stop Shocks campaign, including Autistic Hoya's massive archive on the subject, the templates, the ever-present self-explanatory change.org Shut the Judge Rotenberg Center Down petition, a link to Jennifer Masumba's behavioral sheet of shockable offenses, and a clip out of the 7-hour ordeal undergone by Andre McCollins back in 2002. Trigger warning, when we discuss the JRC, you're going to hear vivid descriptions of and catch clips of surveillance footage of people with disabilities being tortured and abused. If you got young children present, please use your headphones, all right? Other warning, to cover all my bases as I try to do. This channel is marked, hear me, marked, not for kids, for a reason. We do use profanity and speak on dark subjects. That's not going to stop entirely just because someone mentioned it. I'll do my best, but it's still going to be there. If your child is 16 and younger and they are watching this, parental supervision, folks, very obviously advised, all right? I've said it before, I'll say it again because I find it extremely pertinent now. It is not my job to parent your kids. It is not my job to try and basically edit myself to the point that I no longer offend you. Okay? Thank you. And folks, trigger warning, we are about to once again descend into the mad ravings of the lunatic mind known as Dr. Matthew Israel. You're going to hear gaslighting, victim blaming, lies, pseudoscience. Enough ableism and bigotry to circle the globe several times over, all coming from a man with a massive ego and even larger God complex. So just be prepared for the stupid, all right? All right, so you see kind of where we stopped yesterday. Now we are going to see one of the so-called uses for the behavioral rehearsal lessons. To wind it back, a behavioral rehearsal lesson is when a staff member will randomly grab a student, even by their shirt collar, and threaten them. They're doing it to deliberately trigger a bad behavior so that they can then punish it so we know it's wrong. What they use to justify this insanity is by saying, but it's rare that the person has it, but when they do, it's life-threatening and dangerous. Life's dangerous. Just live it long enough. Okay? Even their justifications don't make sense. Because fact of the matter is, when we are at our most self-destructive, it's during meltdown. You cannot precondition a particular response to happen. When knock knock, nobody's home. Know what I'm saying? But let's get into it, shall we? Once again, he's got a chart to prove it. Granted, it's made by him and the doctors he pays for, but we're not going to say that, are we, doctor? Exhibit 226 shows the use of the GED in preventative treatment. GM is a student who had life-threatening self-injurious behaviors, including gouging his body with knives. Here's what we're doing. We're going to put in that shock factor here. And why does he use the shock factor? Why is he deliberately trying to shock you? Because if he can shock you enough, if he can convince you that we are out of control, that means he might also be able to convince you that any means necessary to stop it should be accepted. Let me say that again. If he can convince you that we are just completely and utterly out of control, then possibly he can convince you to get us back under control by any means necessary is okay. See what I'm saying here? I'll say it again. Doctor, I've worked this field. I'm still a part of it in many capacities. Devil's advocate even. The worst case scenario. Explain to me then why this so-called life-saving device is not being used on repeated violent offenders. Because by your justification and your reasoning, and you continuing to tell us how effective and life-changing that it is, then why is the Department of Corrections not strapping their most violent repeat offenders up to these devices right now? Because I promise you, some of those individuals in jail have carried out far more heinous acts than any autistic in any meltdown. It's just a fact. You want to know why they don't? Let me level with you here. It's real simple. Because even prisons realize it is inhumane cruelty beyond all reason. Prisons are not the best known places in the world to actually care about human rights. If even they are looking at this device and decide that it is so cruel and inhumane, they will not even strap up the most violent repeat offenders in their jails. It should tell you something. It should tell you a lot. But let's move on. GM had already lost much of his sight on one eye to self-abuse before being admitted to the JRC. In his most recent placement before he enrolled at JRC, he suffered a life-threatening pulmonary embolism due to the continuous periods of mechanical restraint he was subjected to in order to prevent further self-abuse. Here we go again. Dr. Matthew Israel likes to use other institutions with issues as a means and a way to defend himself and say how what he does is better. Two wrongs don't make a right, doctor. Maybe we should put an emphasis on practicing good medicine when it comes to people with disabilities, instead of either binding us up or torturing us. Because, folks, this is grade school simplification. Okay? There are more answers other than drugging us to death, restraining us, or torturing us. Literally thousands of them. Okay? Now, let's talk about the fact that he always uses shock factors, but he's intellectually dishonest. What do I mean by that? It's very simple. He's blaming this on behaviors. What have I tried to teach you? Behaviors do not come out of nowhere. You do have situations where a sensory issue is so bad that an individual might indeed engage in some form of self-harm as a way to try and alleviate some of that sensory hell that they are in at that moment. The intelligent thing to do in this type of situation is to, first, what do we do in problem solving? We identify the problem. In situations like this, what is the root cause of that behavior? Where is this coming from? Step 1. Step 2 is your problem solving moment. What can be done? Part of it can be solved by talking to us. Okay? Now you're going to have parents who cry and cry and cry and tell you, but they can't speak for themselves. I am their voice. No, you're not, Karen. Sit down. No, you're not. No, you're not. Nothing annoys me more than that. And yes, this includes the parents who do it over the nonverbal, because you know what? They have other forms of communication. Okay? Behavior in and of itself is communication. Okay? If it is something like sensory, and simple things can be put into place, as well as someone who has this diagnosis, as well as having worked in the field, do you know what happens when you work on the core issue that is producing the behavior? It gets better. The behavior may pop up every now and again because nothing's going to totally eradicate 100% all bad behavior out of anyone, neurotypical, autistic, ADHD, or what have you. That's just logic. But it will ebb enough so that we'll be able to function, which should be the goal. But don't let me get into another rant about magical thinking again. Let's move over here. His most recent placement had referred him to the Mass General Hospital for a singulatory surgical cutting pathways of the brain in order to try and stop his self-abusive behaviors. The neurosurgeon advised trying behavioral treatment first, and this is how he was referred to the JRC. Here we go again. Let me explain something to you all about the medical model. They all believe ABA is the only answer. Only answer they'll accept. Because they don't know anything else, folks. These people aren't going out of their way to learn about the other programs that have been put in place out there. Why do you think so many people like me are so overworked? It's because it's not the only answer. These people want you to think it's the only answer because, to put it bluntly, they want your money. And nothing means more steady income than a repeat patient. Basic psychology. What is the root issue? How can we problem solve around it to make it better, if not completely eliminate it? And then, oh my gosh, almost as though by magic, ooh, the behavior comes almost non-existent. This is why I preach about living in reality. This is why I preach logic needs to start being used a whole hell of a lot more in medicine. We're going to go ahead and close on that. We don't get very many views on this channel. The few that we do get do tend to get removed from time to time. So please don't forget to hit the like button, hit subscribe. Don't forget to hit the comments. I do appreciate your time. As always, we here at Spilling Tea do hope you have a good. Bye-bye.